All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into Alphabet Inc.'s 2023 Form 10K filing. I know, financial reports, not exactly like a page-turner thriller, but trust me, this one, it's like a window into one of the most influential tech companies on the planet.
It really is. I mean, this document, it's not just numbers. It's like, Alphabet's strategic roadmap, what they're worried about, how they're planning for the future. It's complex.
Totally. And before we get lost in all the details, it's important to remember that Alphabet Inc. is not just Google.
Right. We're talking about a whole bunch of different businesses.
Yeah, like what all is under that umbrella?
Okay, so you've got your Google services, right? The
Yeah.
search engine, YouTube, all the tools we use every day. Then there's Google Cloud. They're really going head to head with Amazon and Microsoft in the cloud computing world. And then, and this is where it gets interesting, you have the other bets.
The other bets.
Yeah, it's like Alphabet's ventures into all these uncharted territories like healthcare, life sciences, even quantum computing. Wild stuff.
And the 10K, it actually breaks down how each of these segments is doing financially, right? Which ones are growing, which ones are facing challenges, like a scorecard for each business unit.
Absolutely. And it helps us understand where Alphabet's putting its money, where they see the biggest potential for growth, like, for instance, Google Cloud. Their revenue, it's growing like crazy, but it's still behind Google services. But it shows how committed they are to challenging those big players in cloud computing.
So it's all about growth, right? But the 10K, it's also really honest about potential risks, which is surprising in a way.
Right. Transparency, especially for a company as huge as Alphabet, super important. Investors need the real picture, not just the highlight reel. And one thing that really jumps out is, how much they rely on advertising revenue.
That's a big one. I mean, the digital ad world, it's like a constantly moving target, right?
Yeah.
New competitors, changing regulations.
Totally. But the 10K also highlights, what they're doing to diversify their revenue streams.
Oh, yeah. What are they doing there?
Well, they're seeing big growth in things like consumer subscriptions. Think
Wow.
YouTube Premium and Google One. And then there's Google Play and their Pixel devices. Those are becoming more and more popular, too. So it's all about creating a more balanced mix of where the money comes from.
It's interesting how those newer revenue streams, they have different profit margins, right?
Yeah.
Compared to like the traditional ad model. I wonder if that's a sign of things to come. Will it change their overall profitability in the long run?
Definitely something to watch. And the 10K, it goes deep into revenue and operating income for each segment. So analysts can really dive in and try to figure out how all this might impact the company's bottom line.
All right, we got to talk about AI. Alphabet's all in, right? It's everywhere in their business.
It is. And it's not just talk. They're putting serious money into AI research and development. The 10K even mentions their newest AI model, Gemini.
Gemini. Like the twins.
Yep.
What's is there a meaning behind that name, or is it just a coincidence?
Well, the 10K, it doesn't really get into that. But, Gemini, this model, it can handle all sorts of information. Text, code, audio, images, everything. Maybe the name reflects that, like two powerful AI minds working together.
That's an interesting way to think about it. But all this AI development, it's got to come with some ethical considerations, right? I mean, they're building incredibly powerful technology.
For sure. And the 10K, it addresses that directly. They talk about their AI principles, their commitment to fairness, safety, accountability. It's not just a PR move either. They explain how they're building those principles into their whole AI development process.
So it's not just about building the best AI, but building it the right way. And that commitment, it seems to go beyond just their products and services, right? I mean, the 10K talks about how they're investing in research and initiatives to tackle bigger societal challenges.
Absolutely. They're looking at how AI can, revolutionize healthcare, fight climate change, even address economic inequality. It's ambitious, for sure, but it shows they're thinking long term, using technology to make a real difference.
It all sounds pretty amazing, but the 10K is not all sunshine and roses, right? There are risks, especially with their AI projects.
Definitely. They acknowledge that, with this kind of power, there could be unintended consequences. They're working to minimize those risks with tons of testing, bias detection, constant monitoring, and they're even looking at the legal side, how AI regulations are changing and making sure they stay ahead of the curve.
It's refreshing, honestly, to see that level of transparency. They're not just going full steam ahead. They're trying to navigate all these complexities, the ethical stuff, the societal impact.
I agree. It opens up a more honest conversation about AI and its role in our future. But, and this is important, while AI is a big theme in this 10K, we can't forget about the numbers. Alphabet's financial performance, that's still the foundation of this document.
All right, let's talk numbers. What are the big takeaways from 2023?
Well, their total revenue hit $307.4 billion, a 9% jump from the year before. That's pretty impressive considering all the economic uncertainty in 2023.
But was that growth spread evenly across all their businesses? I mean, the 10K breaks down revenue for each segment, right?
It does. And while Google Services is still the biggest revenue generator, Google Cloud, they're the ones to watch. Their revenue, it jumped big time. Could be a sign of how things are shifting in the future.
Okay, what about profits? Did all that revenue growth translate into more money in the bank?
Well, their operating income, it increased by a healthy 13% to $84.3 billion. However, the 10K, it points out that those big investments, especially in AI and those new initiatives, they're having an impact.
So are they sacrificing short-term profits for long-term gains?
It's a good question, and it's a classic dilemma for companies on the cutting edge. Big investments in new tech, they can eat into profits now, but they could lead to bigger rewards down the road.
It sounds like they're playing the long game, betting big on AI. But that long-term vision, it comes with challenges, right?
Absolutely. The 10K, it doesn't sugarcoat any of that. There's a whole section dedicated to outlining potential risks, and some of them are, well, pretty serious.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What are some of the biggest threats they see on the horizon?
One of the biggest is their reliance on advertising revenue, especially with all the changes in regulations and the competition getting fiercer. And then there's the competition in the AI space itself. They're up against some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
It's a battle for AI dominance. And the 10K, it also mentions the complexities of running a global operation.
Right. Managing a business that spans the globe, it's a whole other level of challenge. They talk about, different regulations in different countries, geopolitical tensions, even fluctuating exchange rates.
And then there's data security and privacy. I mean, with the amount of data they handle, those concerns have to be amplified like tenfold.
Exactly, and the 10K acknowledges that. They talk about the possibility of cyber attacks, data breaches, and how important it is to protect user data. They even detail how they're constantly working to improve their security and make sure they're following all the latest data protection laws.
It's a lot to juggle. Innovation, responsibility, growth, risk management. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is. And that's what makes this 10K so interesting. It gives you a peek behind the curtain at this tech giant, trying to solve massive challenges while also trying to build the future.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. They're different businesses. They're focused on AI, the risks they're facing. It seems like Alphabet's facing some headwinds, but they're also ready to weather the storm.
They are. Their 2023 performance, their strategic moves, how they're managing risk, it all shows they're adaptable. They're ready for whatever comes next. But we're just getting started. This 10K, it's full of fascinating insights.
Okay, I'm hooked. What else is in store for us in this deep dive?
Well, in part 2, we're going to dig into their legal troubles. Those antitrust investigations, those are potentially game changers. And we'll also look at their strategy for acquisitions, how that fits into their overall growth plan. Buckle up, things are about to get even more interesting.
So Alphabet's journey, it's not all smooth sailing, right? The 10K, it specifically calls out some pretty serious legal challenges. I'm talking about those antitrust investigations. Those seem like, well, more than just a minor headache.
Oh, yeah. They are definitely not minor. I mean, these investigations in the U.S., Europe, they're really looking at the core of how Alphabet operates, basically questioning if they've become too dominant, if they're stifling competition.
And it's not just vague accusations, right? The 10K, it actually lists some specific things that regulators are looking into.
Right. One of the biggest areas is Google's role in the digital advertising technology market. The Department of Justice and a bunch of states, they're claiming that they're using their huge reach to manipulate ad auctions, give themselves an unfair advantage.
So it's not just about being big, it's about how they're using their size to, tilt the playing field. But the 10K, it doesn't just present the accusations. It also gives us some insight into Alphabet's defense, their side of the story.
Yeah, it's interesting. Their argument is that their practices, they're actually designed to benefit both advertisers and users. They say it leads to, more relevant ads, a better experience for everyone. They also point out that the market's constantly changing. There's competition from all sides, including other big tech companies.
It's like a chess game, right?
Yeah.
Each side making their moves, trying to outmaneuver the other.
Yeah.
But these legal battles, they're not just theoretical debates.
Yeah.
There could be some real consequences for Alphabet.
Absolutely. The 10K, it acknowledges that. They talk about the range of possible outcomes, like huge fines, having to change how they do business, even something called structural remedies.
Structural remedies. Okay, that sounds serious. What does that even mean?
Well, it could be anything from having to sell off certain parts of their business to, like, fundamentally changing how they operate. Regulators could essentially force them to, restructure their whole company to address those competition concerns.
Wow, that's a pretty big deal. It seems like Alphabet's facing some, like, existential questions here. And speaking of lawsuits, the 10K, it mentions the Epic Games case. Didn't a jury just recently side with Epic on some pretty important points?
Yeah, that one's all about Google Play, Alphabet's app store for Android devices. Epic Games, the company behind Fortnite, they claimed that Google's control over, app distribution, in-app payments, all that, it's anti-competitive. And the jury, they agreed, at least partially. They said some of Google Play's policies, they do violate antitrust laws.
So what does this mean for the future of Google Play? Do they have to, like, completely change their app store model?
It's hard to say right now. I mean, the court, they said some of Google's practices are anti-competitive, but they haven't decided on any specific remedies yet. Could be anything from, changing their fee structure to allowing other app stores on Android devices. Lots of possibilities.
So a lot of uncertainty still hanging over Google Play. It sounds like this case, it could have huge implications for, like, the whole mobile app world.
It could. That's why everyone's watching it so closely. It's not just about Alphabet. It's about setting a precedent, It could change how all these digital platforms operate in the future.
It's crazy how these legal battles, they're often buried in all this legal jargon, but they can have such a huge impact. But let's switch gears a bit, talk about some of Alphabet's, like, more proactive strategies. The 10K talks about how they approach acquisitions and investments. It's not like they're just sitting back playing defense.
No, definitely not. They're still very much looking for growth opportunities and acquisitions. They're a big part of that. The 10K, it emphasizes how important they think strategic acquisitions are, to strengthen their core businesses, speed up innovation, maybe even get into whole new markets.
So it's like they're building their empire piece by piece,
Yeah.
acquiring companies that fit into their vision for the future. But acquisitions, they can be tricky, right? I mean, merging different company cultures, different technologies, it can be messy.
It can. The 10K, it acknowledges that. They talk about the challenges of, integrating those acquired businesses, their tech, keeping key people on board, dealing with those culture clashes that always happen.
So they're aware of the risks. That's good.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, are they getting a good return on these investments? The 10K, it doesn't exactly give us a scorecard on how their past acquisitions have performed.
It doesn't really go into specifics about, successes or failures, but there are some clues about how their approach is evolving. They talk about how they're focusing on finding companies that align with their strategic goals, companies with a proven track record of innovation.
So it's not just about buying the shiny new thing. It's about finding the right pieces for the puzzle.
Right.
But even with all the planning in the world, acquisitions, they're still risky.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And the 10K, it's a good reminder that even a company as big as Alphabet, they're not immune to the challenges of mergers and acquisitions. There are no guarantees, and the integration process, it can be full of surprises.
Before we move on, I want to touch on something that often gets lost in these discussions about giant corporations, the human element. The 10K mentions that Alphabet, they did a significant workforce reduction in 2023. What kind of details does it give about that decision?
It says the workforce reduction, it led to, severance payments for employees, other related costs, but it doesn't really get into the reasons behind it or what the long-term impact on their workforce strategy might be.
So the 10K, it gives us the financial picture, but it doesn't really tell us about the human cost of those layoffs. It's a reminder that behind all these numbers, there are real people whose lives are affected by these corporate decisions.
Very true. And it highlights how, financial reports, they can only tell us so much. The 10K gives us valuable information, but it's not the whole story.
Okay, so we've talked about Alphabet's legal battles, their approach to acquisitions, even touched on the human side of things. Clearly, this is a company facing all sorts of challenges, not just technological ones. Legal, financial, ethical. It's complex.
It is. And this 10K, it gives us a really good look at all that complexity. It shows us a company at a crossroads, facing huge opportunities, but also some serious obstacles. And in part 3, we'll explore how all of this shapes their vision for the future and what it can mean for the rest of us.
All right, so we've really dug into Alphabet's performance, their legal stuff, their acquisitions. But what's the bottom line for, the average person? What's the big takeaway from this whole 10K thing?
I think it's pretty clear Alphabet's going all in on the future. And that future, it's all about AI, artificial intelligence.
So not just like improving what they already have, but creating whole new things, powered by AI.
Exactly. It's not just evolution, it's a total transformation.
Okay, but what does that actually look like, in real life? The 10K mentioned some areas where they think AI is going to have a huge impact.
Right. Healthcare, for one. They're looking at how AI can, help diagnose diseases earlier, personalize treatments, even speed up developing new drugs. And transportation, that's another big one, using AI to make traffic flow better, prevent accidents, all sorts of things.
So they're picturing a world where AI is just like woven into everything we do, every part of our lives.
Yeah.
But that kind of makes you wonder, what about the downsides?
Yeah, the 10K, it addresses that too. They talk about, jobs being replaced as AI takes over certain tasks. And there's the whole issue of making sure AI is developed ethically, avoiding bias and discrimination.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it, what impact it has on society.
Mhm.
And it seems like Alphabet's trying to strike a balance. Innovation, but also responsibility.
Definitely. They keep emphasizing their commitment to developing AI responsibly, being transparent about it. They talk about their AI principles, fairness, accountability, safety. And they even mention working with policymakers, experts, to figure out the ethical guidelines for all this.
It's good to see they're not just rushing in blindly, they're being thoughtful about it. But I mean, even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. AI is still new, there are going to be surprises, unexpected consequences.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the 10K's focus on risk management is so important. They know there could be unintended consequences, things they didn't foresee. So they're building safeguards into their AI systems, constantly monitoring for problems, biases, anything that pops up.
Trying to stay ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
It's got to be a tough job with something as complex as AI. But it shows they're taking it seriously, right?
Yeah, they are. And it sets a good example for other companies working with AI. It's a reminder that, progress shouldn't come at the expense of ethics, of people's well-being.
Okay, so Alphabet, they're committed to AI. They see the potential, but also the risks. Where does that leave them? Big picture. How do they see their role in all this?
Well, the 10K, it shows they want to be more than just a tech company. They want to, shape the future, how we live, how we work, how we interact with the world. And AI, that's their key to doing it.
That's a pretty bold vision.
Huh.
But they've got competition, right? The 10K talks about how fierce the AI race is.
Oh, yeah. They're up against the biggest players in tech. Everyone's trying to be the leader in AI. The 10K makes it clear that Alphabet, they have to keep innovating, find the right partners if they want to stay ahead.
It's a strategic game as much as a technological one. And then there's all the regulatory stuff, the public perception of AI that's changing all the time, too.
Exactly. The 10K, it acknowledges that they're under a microscope. Regulators, the public, everyone's watching how they handle AI. They know they have to find that balance, innovation, but also responsibility, growth, but also what's good for society.
So it's not just about being the best, it's about doing it the right way, making sure AI benefits everyone, not just a few.
That's really the heart of it. Alphabet, they're at a crucial point, and this 10K, it gives us a fascinating look into what they're going through. It's uncharted territory, there are huge opportunities, but also real risks. And ultimately, they're trying to build a future where technology serves humanity.
Well, it's been a fascinating deep dive, that's for sure. We've learned a lot, and I think our listeners, they'll have plenty to think about, especially with how Alphabet's vision for the future could impact all of us.
Absolutely. And this is just the beginning. The story of Alphabet, the story of AI, it's still being written. And we all have a part to play in how it unfolds.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for walking us through this. It's been a really insightful journey. And to our listeners, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future's happening now, and we all have a role in shaping it.